Welcome to the Arc of Northern Virginia, and welcome to our 4th annual A Life Like Yours benefit breakfast. We hold this event each March in Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month, and this March I'm really glad to see everybody's faces and to be able to share breakfast with you in person. Prepare to be inspired by the stories you're going to hear today. My name is Mark Albert, and I'm board president at the Arc of Northern Virginia, but I'm more widely known as Cassie's dad. That's kind of my brand. My daughter Cassie's way more famous than I'll ever be. The theme for our this year's breakfast, Accelerating Community Inclusion, highlights the work ahead of us to achieve inclusive community for our loved ones with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Our most recent board president, Lissy John, introduced a benefit breakfast describing how she first encountered the Arc of Northern Virginia, including details about the early help she received as she was pursuing services for her son. And I thought that was a great introduction. I wanted to follow her lead, but the problem is I can't remember learning about the Arc of Northern Virginia. I can't remember a time when the Arc of Northern Virginia wasn't there to support my family. The Arc of Northern Virginia has always been there. Well, not quite always, but for a very long time, since 1962. I mentioned that this is our 4th annual A Life Like Yours benefit breakfast. But did you know this last Monday, was the 60th birthday of the Arc of Northern Virginia. That's 60 years of supporting inclusion into the community for individuals with disabilities. That's 60 years of providing guidance, information, and resources to help families support loved ones with disabilities. That's 60 years of the Arc of Northern Virginia working to create a world where people with intellectual and developmental disabilities can live a life like yours. Without the Arc of Northern Virginia, I cannot imagine how my wife Robin and I could have gotten through the maze of services and programs we had to navigate to help Cassie achieve her potential and to support her inclusion into the educational system, the workforce, and the community. The Arc of Northern Virginia was there every step of the way to help us get the help we needed so Cassie could be defined not by her disabilities, but by her abilities. The mission of the Arc of Northern Virginia is to promote and protect the human rights of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and actively support their full inclusion and participation into the community throughout their lifetimes. We've been doing that for 60 years. And with the help and support of people like you, 60 years from now, the Arc of Northern Virginia will still be here providing important support for inclusion of individuals with disabilities.
Isn't it great to be out together again, celebrating, right? Even more great is to live in a community that cares enough about each other to do the right thing, to get us to this point, to be vaccinated. And probably the thing that makes me most proud in Fairfax County is the way in which we have protected the most vulnerable residents of our community who have needed our protection over the last 2 years. But I am here today, excited, of course, to be out with all of you in person, but more excited about the fact that we are celebrating 60 years of advocacy that the Arc has put in to help people in our community. 60 years, a long time, and what a difference those 60 years have made in the lives of so many people. We did pass a resolution at the Board of Supervisors, and all of those supervisors who are here today were supportive of this resolution. It was one of the easier resolutions to get passed in the county, but it's one that I think is vitally important to mark the 60 years of work that the Arc has done. So I am going to read it. It's not that long, don't worry, but the words in it are very important. Whereas the Arc of Northern Virginia is celebrating its 60th anniversary in 2022 of providing and advocating for supports that ensure people of all abilities all abilities can be independent and productive citizens. And whereas the ARC of Northern Virginia is committed to empowering and supporting people with disabilities to become self-advocates and active community participants. And whereas the organization provides GAP services, including information and referral, a special needs trust, developmental disability waiver case management, public guardianship services, tech for independent living and disability advocacy. And whereas the ARC of Northern Virginia supports and represents thousands of area families, professionals, and self-advocates in the quest for a life like yours. And whereas Fairfax County is proud to recognize and support the efforts of this outstanding organization and the people for whom it advocates, now therefore be it resolved that the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors, on behalf of all residents of Fairfax County, does hereby honor and recognize the ARC of Northern Virginia for its 60th anniversary and urges all residents to acknowledge the tremendous value of the work it does and dedicate themselves to the empowerment and inclusion of all residents of Fairfax County. Congratulations to the ARC of Northern Virginia.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ricky Epstein, and it is my honor and privilege to serve as the Executive Director of the ARC of Northern Virginia. This is a really, This is a really exciting time for our organization. As you just heard, we're celebrating 60 years of service to our community. Wow, what a milestone that is. I think back to those initial gatherings of parents who desperately wanted better lives for their children with disabilities. Connection, not isolation. Inclusion, not segregation. And programs and services for their children in the community when there were none to be had. It's been said, never stand in the way of a determined parent. And so on March 21st, 1962, the ARC of Northern Virginia was incorporated in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and determination has ruled the day ever since. Looking back over the past 6 decades, we have accomplished a great deal. We have been a fiercely effective advocacy organization on both the local and state levels. We've expanded our special needs trust and public guardianship programs, and we created our Transition Points program to support people with disabilities and their families throughout the entire lifespan. Our award-winning Tech for Independent Living program has grown to include TravelMate, EmployMate, SafetyMate, and DailyMate. And most importantly, we have helped self-advocates to find their own voices through our People First and Toastmasters programs. While anniversaries are a natural time to look back and reflect, we must remain focused on what's ahead. There's a reason why the rearview mirror is only a fraction of the size of the front windshield. The future is always changing. And if we learned anything from the past 2 years, it's that we must remain relevant to the needs of people with disabilities and their families, as those needs evolve with changing times and circumstances. The ARC of Northern Virginia has a proud history fighting for equity in the public schools. Now we look to the future of special education programs, and we must speak out for updating individualized education plans to guarantee the full inclusion of all children all the time. Changes to how we all live and work in a post-pandemic world has resulted in tremendous challenges in finding trained, qualified, and experienced caregivers. There are too many cases where families have been forced to live on one salary while the second parent has had to quit their job to care for their loved one because there are no direct support professionals to be hired. The ARC of Northern Virginia is committed to fight to improve the landscape for these vitally important direct support professionals across our state. We're in a housing shortage all across the country. Affordable housing is impossible to find within the DMV area, and supportive housing options for people with disabilities are sometimes non-existent. The freedom and ability to live independently is at the very core of what a life like yours means. And the ARC of Northern Virginia must lead the efforts to increase those opportunities for all who want it. And as the business community speaks of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and embraces hybrid and remote work models, these changes bring significant opportunities to expand the workforce with competitive living wage jobs for people with disabilities. This is what our vision of workplace inclusion looks like, and we're committed to expanding community support to make it happen. And nowhere will our voice be louder and our resolve stronger than our advocacy efforts to change public policy, especially with regard to funding critical services. Virginia is still ranked 39th in the nation in funding community-based services for people with disabilities. And there are now more than 14,000 people on Virginia's statewide waiting list for critical services and supports. I'm hearing the phrase budget surplus tossed around quite a bit here in Virginia. But here's what every family in this room knows. If you don't pay your bills, you don't have a surplus. And with more than 14,000 Virginians waiting for services, some for decades, Virginia is not paying its bills. The ARC of Northern Virginia, with our advocates and our advocacy partners, will not be silent until this wrong is rectified. Ending the waiting list is simply the right thing to do. It is our vision that all people with intellectual and developmental disabilities belong in our community and have fundamental moral, civil, and constitutional rights to be fully included and actively participate in all aspects of society. About 39,000 people with intellectual and developmental disabilities live in Northern Virginia, and the families that love and support them turn to us for help. The ARC of Northern Virginia will continue fighting to make sure that the future is better for people with disabilities and their families, and I invite you to join us in this fight. Thank you. I am now pleased to welcome Nicole Zupan with us today. Nicole is one of the few people who see the developmental disability system from many sides. As a mom, she's been an advocate for her son and his services his entire life. As an educator, she works closely with students with disabilities, their educational teams, and supporters to plan for not only what a student needs at a moment in time, but how to achieve their vision for the future. As a parent-to-parent leader, she has worked with other families all over the state to share her personal and professional advice, experience, and endless compassion. And as an advocate, she is always willing to share her story and perspective to meet and to push for change for all. Nicole's gifts and talents have brought a great deal of hope and support to many other families, including to our team at the ARC of Northern Virginia. Please welcome Nicole.
Thank you, Ricky. I'm honored to be with you all today and grateful for this opportunity to share with you a little of my story, my family's story, and the story of my son, Joseph. Joseph is a young adult on the autism spectrum. He exhibited the not uncommon trajectory of meeting most of his milestones for the first year or so and then slowly losing his speech. He was diagnosed towards the end of our overseas tour in Dubai in the spring of 2003. Getting the diagnosis created a primal shift in the dynamics of our family. Over the next decade, his life revolved around home applied behavior analysis, private speech, and occupational therapy. He was a very busy guy. By 2008, his speech started to return with the help of augmentative and alternative communication devices. He worked hard to communicate his wants and needs, and we saw a quirky sense of humor emerge. He would play little pranks around the house, like turning off the lights in the dining room when my husband and I were still in there talking, and then running off laughing, because it was the most hysterical thing he's ever seen. We also saw a love of walking outside and shooting hoops at the local park emerge. He showed a tremendous strength in memorizing. He memorized our landline, our cell phone numbers, the code to open the garage door when the caregiver couldn't remember it, his home address. He was a puzzle genius, putting together bigger and bigger puzzles just by knowing what shapes fit together and never referring to the picture on the box. He enjoyed weekends and weeknight respite stays at Jill's house. Thank you, Jill's house. And rocked to the music, yes, definitely. There, God said. And then he rocked to the music at our church that we belong to. Most recently, he's contributed to the growing needs of the food pantry run by our church by packing snacks at home and then delivering them to the church. Through all of this, his beautiful smile and sunny personality shone through to all who engaged with him. He is currently finishing up his Fairfax County Public Schools career at the Davis Career Center, just down the road. Go Davis. Where he is honing his skills in a variety of tasks at the Tysons Corner Marriott. Given the challenges he has faced, I am enormously proud of how far he's come, and I look forward to the next phase of his life as an adult in the community. Who knows what new strengths he will demonstrate over the coming years. I was introduced to the ARC of Northern Virginia around 2004-2005 through parents of autistic children of Northern Virginia. The ARC of Northern Virginia provided a presentation on Medicaid waivers and introduced me to a number of resources. Over the succeeding years, the ARC has been there to guide me through all the various challenges that have come up for our families. School challenges, individualized education program development, respite, transitioning out of the school system, and advocacy with local and state leaders. Most importantly, the ARC of Northern Virginia has provided a way for me to grow in my advocacy for our children, yours and mine, at all levels. Whether it be at my local school or with local government or state officials, the ARC has given me the information and the platform to advocate for the needs of children and young adults with disabilities. As an enhanced autism teacher within Fairfax County Public Schools, I've been able to pass along this information to my families and to the staff wherever I'm working, further widening the net of informed individuals who can help individuals with disabilities live a meaningful life in their community. I could not do that without the ARC of Northern Virginia, and I am immensely grateful to them for all that they do. The ARC is a powerful force in Northern Virginia in the battle to provide our loved ones with the resources they need. I thank each of you for your support in helping the ARC of Northern Virginia continue this mission. Thank you. Our next speaker has for many years advocated for disability rights. He is a graduate from Partners in Policymaking, an 18-month program to train disability advocates. Born in 1988 in Salisbury, Maryland, he was diagnosed with being on the autism spectrum in 1992 and moved with his parents to Leesburg, Virginia 4 years later. He is a proud graduate of George Mason University with a BA in history. He works part-time as a substitute library page for the Loudoun County Public Library and holds an additional job in retail. He has lived independently in Leesburg for the last 7 years. Please welcome Corey Weisman.
Thank you, Nicole. Good morning, everybody. As both an adult on the autism spectrum and an advocate for disability rights, my main focus point has been to live a life like yours, meaning those without disabilities. In other words, I think everyone, regardless of disability status, should be entitled to various aspects of independent living, especially housing and employment. Throughout my life, I have always felt like I have defined my diagnosis rather than let it define me. Housing is one way that I have advocated for my rights and independence. When I reached adulthood, with the help of the ARC of Northern Virginia, I applied for a housing choice voucher, which would provide me with subsidized housing. After being on the state waiver waiting list for 8.5 years, I received support services and subsequently the opportunity to get my own place to live, a 2-bedroom apartment in Leesburg. While there were several options for an apartment as a non-driver, I advocated for one close to a bus line in order to access my workplace as well as other stores and services. In addition, I asked for one that was a 2-bedroom as opposed to a 1-bedroom, as I did not want to feel too confined. This required completing paperwork to discuss my additional issue of anxiety in order to qualify for the larger apartment. It was from coming to understand the waiver and how long it took to get services and receiving the housing choice voucher that I began to advocate in earnest. I wanted to live independently, but I knew I needed support for certain activities of daily living, and it didn't seem right that I and so many others had to wait so long for services. So I talked to both my case manager and also the director of advocacy at the ARC of Northern Virginia and learned that speaking to those in power could be really effective, and that is what I decided to do. Throughout my high school years, I also knew that employment was one key step with regard to establishing independence. As I began working, I found that I needed to advocate for the right of people on the autism spectrum to have jobs. Following my graduation from college, I realized that the need to advocate for employment that met my skills and interests was even more important. As a lifelong lover of books and reading, I feel so fortunate to have been an employee of my local library system for the past several years, and prior to that, I was a paid employee in my high school library during my junior and senior years of high school. In addition, I have always considered my position for the library to be the one that fits my skills and addresses my sensory needs for movement throughout the day. I started out as a volunteer, eventually getting hired 4 years ago as a substitute library page following 8 applications and interviews. I used the interviews to accept feedback and develop my interviewing strategies. This opportunity has been overall very positive, as both staff and patrons have praised my hard work, attention to detail, and great attitude. I feel that by demonstrating these skills, I prove on a daily basis that people with disabilities are worth hiring. We have the same skill sets as others, we might just require a different approach or a combination to do it. The ARC of Northern Virginia has helped me navigate services with DARS, the Department of Rehabilitative Services, and ensured that I received what I needed. I am humbled yet very proud to have been part of several worthwhile opportunities, experiences, and events with regard to my commitment to disability advocacy. Among the highlights include meeting and discussing my triumphs and struggles at the Virginia State Capitol in Richmond with then State Senator and now U.S. Congresswoman Jennifer Wexton, and other politicians, speaking as well as speaking before a state subcommittee, serving on various panels over the years, accepting the proclamation for Developmental Disability Awareness Month from my local Board of Supervisors, and being a proud graduate of the State Partners in Policy Making class series. This summer, I had the opportunity to mentor younger people virtually with disabilities on self-advocacy. Once I even had an hour-long conversation with my mom and Virginia Attorney General Mark Herring regarding disability rights in my home. Getting involved with the ARC of Northern Virginia has opened many advocacy opportunities for me. I feel that each time I advocate for a life like yours, it makes me feel like I am a necessity in my local disability advocacy community. I have received numerous praises from my peers on the autism spectrum and also from people with and without disabilities who have attended public events from which I spoke up for my rights as well as those of others. Meeting with high-level officials not only increased my self-esteem, but it also increased my passion for advocacy, as I now realized those in political power were listening to me. I am lucky to be off the waiver wait list and living independently while more than 14,000 Virginians are still on the list, which I have felt and to this day still feel is unfair. Hearing that was one reason why my advocacy for a life like yours has been ongoing. Everyone, in my opinion, should be entitled to live the life they want to live, regardless of how many abilities they have. Thank you very much for your attention and for accepting our invitation to this benefit breakfast, and thank you very much for listening to my story.
Social isolation is nothing new to older adults who no longer drive. Your older neighbors who have lost their independence rely on the kindness of others to find support and rides in times of need. This is that time. Put yourself in your neighbor's shoes. The pandemic crisis has everyone afraid and isolated in this lockdown, but for older adults, now more than ever. Many older adults are on fixed incomes and cannot afford taxis, Uber, and Lyft to get where they need to go. Seniors who need support and rides call their volunteer drivers angels. When this health crisis lifts, your neighbor will need help to get to their routine checkups and social activities. Their health, both mental and physical, depends on you. Give the gift of a lift so you can be part of the solution. You hold the key to making a difference. Sign up to drive today.